Okay, listen, I get it. It's Arcane. Everybody loves Powder. Everyone loves Jinx. They're kind of two separate people now, right? Everybody loves Vi, but nobody loves my favorite character, Ekko. Where are all the Ekko fans? Somebody help me out. What's going on, you guys? James here with another real review, and today we're getting into my spoiler-free thoughts on the first 3 episodes of Arcane Season 2. A huge thank you to Netflix for giving me the chance to watch these early for review, and yes, my reactions begin for Act 1, which is the first 3 episodes of Season 2, tomorrow. So go ahead and get subscribed down below to the channel if you don't want to miss out on that, and all of my reviews for Season 2, because if you don't know, well, I guess now you do. The release schedule for Arcane Season 2 is very interesting. We have Act 1, which is episodes 1 to 3 that have dropped today, and then Act 2, which is episodes 4 through 6, and Act 3, episodes 7 through 9. And you're probably wondering, well, why are they doing this? Because guys, this is the final season of Arcane. Season 1 debuted in November of 2021, and, well, 3 years later, here we are on the cusp of the final season that will hopefully resolve whatever story they got going on between Vi and Jinx. Now, Arcane is created by Christian Linke and Alex C., and the animation studio, I gotta shout them out because they're incredible, and we'll get into this shortly, but Fortiche Production, oh my goodness, y'all, give them the awards that they deserve because, wow. Now, this season is headlined by Hailee Steinfeld, who voices Vi, Ella Purnell, who voices Jinx, Leung, who voices Caitlyn, and Shannon, who voices Ekko. And you're darn right I threw in Ekko's name there in the starring section, because he's a star. And I'm so excited to dive into why Act 1, I should say, of Season 2 was pretty darn good. So let's get right into my positives, you guys, and begin with, well, what we just talked about, which is the animation. Now, this show is notoriously expensive to produce and animate and now put out for the world to see. So maybe that's why they're ending it with Season 2, I can only imagine. But my goodness, the animation team just did an incredible job here again, and we're only 3 episodes in. I will tell you, there are instances where I even think that maybe the animation is better than Season 1. I absolutely love how the colors pop when it comes to Jinx and her scenes, how the landscape shots in Piltover look, and I mean, they're gorgeous, and how each sequence flows in and out of different art styles pretty seamlessly. We see this a lot during the montage moments at the beginning of episodes and during action sequences where maybe a character fires a gun, right? And then you see in 2D hand-drawn animation style it says poof right over the gun. It's so cool to see how they combine all of these different elements to make it a very sometimes overstimulating experience, but nonetheless a very enjoyable one. I will say, while Season 1 is really grimy, Season 2 seems to have less of that grime feel, but instead we get just a sense of despair. And that is bled through the screen thanks to the animation, because there are some moments where characters are just breaking down, even in the first 3 episodes, and I'm like, man, I felt that. I felt that through the screen. Now, of course, a big attention grabber for me in Season 1 of Arcane was how well the action was shot. And I'm going to have to be honest with you guys, through the first 3 episodes of Season 2, they've not missed a beat. But they've knocked a lot of people on their feet, or off their feet. Darn it, I messed that line up. Whatever. But guys, the action is very well directed. And I will tell you that I didn't feel like I was losing track of things that were happening on screen. And I think that's really impressive due to the fact that there is a lot going on. And every episode, there's one action sequence. It usually happens at the end of episodes, and it is the grand spectacle. It's a set piece that it'll leave you floored. And I particularly loved episode 1 and 3's fight scenes. Honorable mention for episode 2, where we see some cool inventions on display. I'll just say that. Spoiler free, after all. But during episode 1, we got a very chaotic moment, right? There was a lot going on, but episode 3 was a little bit more intimate to a degree, and you'll know what I mean when you see it, but I liked it. A little bare bones at times, well, considering everything in this show so far. But it isn't all about the action, of course, it is about the acting, and there are some really strong bits of dialogue between our characters, but most notably for me, between Caitlyn and Vi. Leung voices Caitlyn, and Hailee Steinfeld, she is, if you don't know her by now, my goodness how, but she voices Vi, and I love what they do with these characters. There's a certain dynamic between them where what we learn about them and maybe that they are, I guess, interested in one another from season 1 carries over to season 2. I'm really trying so hard not to say anything more than that, but I like that they give us almost a 3-dimensional look into their lives. So we understand Caitlyn's struggle, right? We understand Vi's struggle. She's still struggling with the fact that Jinx is possibly still her sister underneath all this destruction and death. But both of them do an excellent job at really grounding the show, at least through the first 3 episodes. And I felt the raw emotion between both of them as well, especially during episode 3 where, well, let's just say their quote-unquote friendship takes a turn. And you're most likely wondering, what about Jinx, right? Well, I'll say that she's not in the first 3 episodes a whole lot, and when she is, it's either a big action sequence, so not a lot of diving deep into her character, or it's just bits and pieces of where she's at on her journey. I mean, she's a wanted woman now, right? Even the Undercity, they're like, we don't like her too much, and the Topsiders are like, put a bounty on her head. But I think Jinx, who's voiced by Ella Purnell, does a great job, at least with the screen time she's given. So Ella Purnell, you might have recently known her from Fallout, but Ella Purnell does an excellent job bouncing back and forth between the characterization of Jinx and still at times the characterization of Powder. That's all I'll say. I just really like what they do, especially in episode 3, because you can tell Jinx is struggling. So there is a ton of parallelism at place with our characters, but you do see it most, I guess, obviously with Jinx. What happens is Jinx meets a new character named Isha, I believe, or Aisha, and I hope I pronounced that properly, one way or the other. But this is a young girl in the Undercity who comes across Jinx. Now, I can't say anything more. You'll see it in my reaction to episode 3, but there's a similarity here between how Powder attached herself to Vi and how this young girl Isha is attaching herself to Jinx. I like what they do there. So the writing is pretty sharp, even though sometimes the writing can get in its own way. So maybe this is a good time now to get into the negatives, because I know you're thinking, no, James, it's perfect. Well, nothing and no one's perfect. So it's time to dive into a couple of things that didn't really help episodes 1 through 3. Now, in every single episode so far in season 2, there's a montage that has licensed music blaring in the background at the beginning of episodes, and it's usually after credits. Well, the intro credits, I should say. But it is a bit jarring and a little inefficient at storytelling, because these are scenes that maybe I would have liked to see play out, but we get them very quickly, and I understand this is the final season. They only have 9 episodes to work with, and they're only 40 minutes each, so we don't have too much time. I understand that. But it felt a little on the nose, especially because the lyrics were really on the nose for these songs, and I didn't feel like the music choice was particularly good. Now, of course, Imagine Dragons' Enemy in the beginning opening credits it's pretty much associated with this show now, but it's catchy. There are some songs that I'm like, okay, I'm feeling the beat, but most of the time the lyrics are just way too on the nose, and it does take me out of the experience. And speaking of being taken out of the experience, I think episode 2's pacing was probably the worst I've seen in this series so far. Basically what happens is episode 2 tries to do a lot of exposition, right? Now, exposition, it's not a bad thing. Exposition can be effective. However, in a moment like, well, I can't say what it is, but in episode 2, you're expecting a little bit more momentum carried over from the season 2 premiere. However, it does feel like the momentum is stilted, unfortunately, because of the issues with the writing, and some of the dialogue was weak, and it just felt like maybe can we just get there, you know what I mean? So that was my issue with episode 2, and that was probably the biggest issue I've had with any of the episodes, and it's noticeable. So I wonder, do you notice pacing issues in episode 2 as well? And lastly, in the negative section, guys, I gotta say, sometimes we just get hand-delivered way too much lore in this world of Arcane. Now I understand, right? This is based off of 2 heroes from League of Legends, if I'm not wrong, but this is an adaptation, so they're building out a fresh backstory for these characters. Awesome. But a lot of Episode 3 especially just throws way too many subplots into the bunch. At one point I was counting maybe 5 or 6 different subplots in a single episode. You just can't do that efficiently. I don't care what TV show you are, it just doesn't work, and especially when it's noticeable. Because episode 3 has these moments where it's complete setup for Act 2. And okay, that's awesome, but it's still one season. That's maybe my issue with the release schedule a bit, which is, yeah, you're breaking up and segmenting season 2, you're making it into an event, I understand, but it just doesn't really work for me with episode 3. I also thought that maybe there was some elements that if you're a fan of the video game, you probably know, and I don't, but they just gave me so many headaches, especially with Jace and Heimerdinger, and I'm thinking like, yo, the show's beginning to maybe lose its focus, or I should say the episode is, because I'm hopeful that in episode 4, at the beginning of Act 2, we get a little bit more of a direction that's clear, focused, and poignant, because episode 3 for me had way too much happening, and it just didn't work. So if I had to rate each episode, you guys, let's go. Episode 1 is titled Heavy is the Crown, and honestly, I'd give that one a 4.5 out of 5. That was an awesome season premiere, right? Now, episode 2 is Watch It All Burn. That episode had the pacing issues, right? But the last third of that episode was pretty darn good, so I'd give it a 3.5 out of 5. Now, episode 3, I was back and forth. I had it at a 4 out of 5, and then I had it at a 3.5, and I kept going back to the original score and the new score, and I'm going to be honest, I think after talking about it a little bit more, the lore really hurts that episode to me and how deep they dive into it, because the exposition sort of just weighs down the momentum of this episode. So, episode 3 is titled Finally Got the Name Right, and I finally got my score right. It is 3.5 out of 5. So, again, not an awful start to season 2, and I'm kind of glad that it is a good, not great start, because if they're saving the best for last, we're in for a treat. But if you don't want to miss out on whether or not that comes true, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, and hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy my Arcane coverage, and get loud in the comments and tell me, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Are you sort of in the middle? I'm so excited to hear your thoughts, because this show is so darn popular, and I'm glad I watched it, because season 1 I liked, you know? So season 2, I'm ready to be blown away, guys. And so far, so good. Alrighty, y'all. Well, again, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you for my reactions this weekend. And yeah, there are some moments I kind of freak out. But anyways, God bless you guys, and I'll catch you at the next screening. Oh, and the Sour Patch Kids, it makes sense in my reactions. Trust me.